Welcome back to another episode of the Outsider Sports Baseball Podcast. Corey Jason, Ben Mandel. Ben, welcome back. Great to have you back on.
Yeah, I got fired for a bit, but Corey got desperate today, and here I am back.
You know what? I needed the help. All hands on deck. Hall of Fame ballots. Hall of Fame just got voted on. We know who's in. The Mets made some moves.
The Mets made a desperation move. I'm not upset about it, but, Plan B is Plan B for a reason.
Good thing Plan B starts with Bo, right? We'll talk about that in a little bit.
Let's
First
just
things
hope he has
first.
a little bit better luck than another Bo.
First things first, we're going to talk some Hall of Fame, right? So we have the results. We have two new Hall of Famers, and I'll kind of run through the full list. Carlos Beltran and Andrew Jones both made the Hall of Fame. Beltran in his fourth ballot, Jones in his ninth. Beltran had 84.2% of the vote, Jones 78.4%. They're the ninth and 10th center fielders in baseball history to be elected into the Hall of Fame. There were only 8 prior, the most recent being Ken Griffey Jr. in 2016. Before that, Kirby Puckett in like 2001 or 2. So it's been a minute since we had a center fielder in. Andrew Jones started off his Hall of Fame ballot career with 7% of the vote. To go from 7% now to 78.4%, that is the largest ever jump to election from first to final ballot.
Yeah, that's one of those that it's confusing to me because it's like, what made you vote for him now and not before?
Right.
Very few people actually use all of their votes. So, like, I just don't get it. Like, what makes you say, like, yeah, he deserves to get in on try 9. But I still think he's a deserving player. One of those guys I saw the tail end of his career as I was starting to really pay attention to baseball, but still a daunting player as a Met. And then obviously Carlos Beltran, one of my favorite players growing up, used my first Mets jersey was a Beltran jersey. Loved watching him play. Broke my heart when they traded him, but by default, then Zach Wheeler became my favorite Met because that's who they acquired.
Is he still your favorite?
Embarrassingly, he's my only Mets jersey I own right now.
He's been a Philly for how long?
Yeah, and like the last 3 Mets games I've gone to have happened to be Mets-Phillies games. So I don't know if people just think I'm a troll or what.
Closeted Phillies fan?
Definitely not. Definitely not.
So Andrew Jones is obviously going to go in as an Atlanta Brave. Carlos Beltran, people think they know what team he's going in, and then when they asked him in his interview after election, he said he's not sure if he's going to go in as a Met, a Royal, or a blank cap because of that. How do you feel about that?
I think the amount of teams that he played for, it makes sense to go in as a blank cap. I don't think it makes any sense to go in as a Royal. I think if he's going to pick a team, the Mets are the team to pick. It's an organization that, he still has a good relationship with.
He works for them
Yeah,
currently.
exactly. So it wouldn't make sense for him to pick another cap, but he did have a significant impact with his career after the Mets. His best years were with the Mets, but he did have a few impactful years afterwards with some playoff runs on some quality teams. So I can understand, not wanting a Mets cap to kind of overshadow all of that. But if he picks a team, it has to be the Mets.
Right. I mean, he talked about how the Mets and Royals were the teams he felt like he performed the best on, and it would boil down to one of those two if he were to pick one. He did break through with the Royals, spent probably just as much time as a Royal as he did a Met, if not slightly less. But what's funny between the two of them, Jones and Beltran, other than the fact that they both had a stint with the Yankees, they were born one day apart. I think that's really funny how after their whole lives, their whole careers, they get elected to the Hall of Fame and they're just born one day apart.
Especially considering how much longer Beltran played.
how much longer Beltran played, and how much longer Jones has had to wait on the ballot to get elected. So we got those two in. If you had to give a guess what Beltran does, which hat?
I think he goes to the Mets hat. I think Steve
I think
Cohen.
so as well.
Steve Cohen will say like, "Hey, look, dude, $10,000. Just put the
Now,
Mets
mind
cap on."
you, the Royals only have one Hall of Famer in their team history in George Brett. They might say, hey, we'll give you some money, George Steinbrenner style, to go in as a Royal.
You don't want to get into a spending war with Steve Cohen.
I mean,
But at the
do you
same
think
time, I could see, if Beltran wants to stick out more, that's one way to do it.
or just a blank cap to signify both teams? Mike Mussina did it when he had to choose between the Yankees and the Orioles.
Mm-hmm. I think a blank cap is, look, he played for a lot of teams after the fact, too.
But who claims him? The Astros, the Giants, the Yankees, the Rangers. We don't claim him as one of ours.
No, and I don't even think the Royals do so much either. Like,
I
that's
mean,
part of the problem with being a small market team. When you let guys go early in their career, it's different if he chose to go somewhere else. You let him go. You cannot, like, that's a big difference. The Mets went
right.
out and said, "We want you."
But then the Mets also let him go.
Well, in the tail end of his career, the Mets were in a rebuild, said, "Hey, go get a championship." Like, no hard feelings. It was what he wanted to do.
So we have those two. I'll go kind of player by player and see what we think of those results. Chase Utley with 59.1%. He's likely to get in the next cycle or two. I don't really think he's that great. I understand why people vote for him. He's not somebody that would be on my list. I'm not a big Chase Utley guy.
He's someone who was good over his career.
Right.
Not like, I believe Hall of Fame is great. Like, you
You
look
know,
at Beltran, you look at Andrew Jones, those are center fielders, defensive guys, 5-tool players who were also switch hitters. Like, that,
right.
talk about perfecting your craft.
Willie Mays one time walked up to Andrew Jones and said, "You're the greatest center fielder I've ever seen." You know, nobody's going up to Chase Utley and saying, "You're the greatest second baseman I've ever seen."
No, and it waters down the Hall of Fame when guys like that get in.
But then again, the Hall of Fame is, I'm usually a small hall type of thinker, but as we kind of study the hall and who's in, the hall is disproportionately small, meaning we have a lot of guys from, the yesteryears, the early days of baseball, and we're using that and holding off a lot of the newer players that probably should be in when you compare what they did to the game compared to what these older players did. So in that sense, a Chase Utley does make a lot of sense and doesn't really hurt the Hall. Same with an Andrew Jones. They are guys that, again, in baseball history, only 8 center fielders prior to today are Hall of Famers. Does that make sense to you? Only 8 center fielders?
Well, and if you look at how many are second basemen, I'm sure the number, while
Right.
may
It's
be
not a
not that
lot.
low, it's not going to be a lot because historically, you're not going to get good offensive players at center field and second base.
Right. And I
You're going to
think that's
see
why
those at other
Utley maybe
positions. So
should get in if I'm talking myself into that.
Look, I think, part of why Utley is regarded the way he is because he was a very good offensive second
Yeah.
baseman. He wasn't great defensively.
No, he was good. Andy Pettit's the next one. He had a massive jump. Now at 48.5% of the vote. He's somebody who is kind of knocking on the door of potential enshrinement. Pettit right now, he is in his 8th year on the ballot. He's got 2 more left. So it is entirely possible he gets in either through this committee if he has another solid jump in the next year or the year after, or in one of the era committees. This is a very positive sign for Andy Pettit.
Yeah, I think it's kind of odd that he's another guy who is still on the ballot, like in the fact that he hasn't gotten in yet.
He has the steroid tinge to him.
Yeah, but at the same time, like, he's not the same level. Like, I understand anyone associated is, you know, kind of thrown in the spot, but I feel like when you tell the story of baseball, Pettit is one of those guys that you can't really tell without.
Right, I agree. And then the next one that surprised me, and when we did our exercise on the Hall of Fame a few weeks ago, I'm gonna go back and pull this up. You weren't a part of it, but me, John, and Dylan talked. I had Felix Hernandez on my ballot. He only had 20.6% of the vote last year. Now he jumped all the way up to 46.1%. He is on a fast track to the Hall of Fame in the next probably 3 years.
How much of that do you think is the Mariners going on a bit of a deep playoff run here?
I'm going to say 0.
Well, I don't know, because you look at what the Mariners, they don't have a lot of lore to flash you back on.
They don't, but
You're seeing a lot of King Felix stuff.
I mean, you
Like,
have
if you're going to
Edgar,
talk about a former
Griffey,
Mariner,
Ichiro,
in pitching, you don't have
pitching,
anyone
Randy
outside of King
Johnson.
Felix. So you look at Randy Johnson as a Seattle Mariner. Come on.
Well, I'm saying they do claim him.
Yeah, but he's not, like, if you're going and you're looking at the pitchers of Mariners
Right.
past, there's only one name that jumps, and it's Felix Hernandez.
I
So, like,
agree.
I have a
He's
feeling
somebody.
that kind of thing could help jump a player's popularity.
I disagree that has any bearing on it. I think he's a Hall of Famer because when you look at the modern day pitcher, it's unfair to hold him to the standards of when guys would throw complete games regularly. 200 innings in a season is a great feat now. Guys are only pitching 5 or 6 innings. The position of starting pitcher has changed so drastically. And I get that he fell off towards the end of his career a bit, but he was so dominant. He had such a dominant, 5 or 6 year run that he's a Hall of Famer because he was one of the best starting pitchers of a generation. And that's really what this is about. He dominated. He was a guy that kids our age grew up thinking was great. Same with Kershaw, Verlander, Scherzer. You have other guys like Cole Hamels that, we'll talk about in a little bit, fit into this category as well.
Look, I'm not saying, by no means am saying that Felix Hernandez is not deserving of the Hall of Fame. But at the same time, if, you're a guy who's buried in a small market like that, look, I think you and I used to talk about it all the time. He was one of the more underrated pitchers in baseball because of how nasty he was. He was just buried on the West Coast. So,
Yeah.
when that organization is now finally having some success, that could draw attention and popularity to a player. That's all I'm saying.
I mean, in the public, but not in the writers who cover the game. It just no correlation.
I have no faith in those writers.
Oh, I think they're awful. You have Bob Nightingale who put out his ballot, and it was Carlos Beltran, Andrew Jones, and Omar Vizquel. So, sexually assaulting.
Look, we can talk about Nightingale and Vizquel every year, but
I know, but he draws the line at steroids, but not at sexually assaulting a special needs bat boy in the locker room for Vizquel. That's okay, but a little HGH is a big issue. I got a problem with that.
Look, I'm by no means, I don't trust the writers. That's what I'm saying. I don't sit here and say that the writers are they vote on as perfectly as they can.
Right.
I often disagree more than I agree.
Next up is A-Rod, who cracked 40%, jumped 3% from last year. He's got another 5 years left. He's not in a terrible position. It's just that he's going to need to show some real strides in the next 2 voting rounds, 2 or 3, to really have a shot. And I just don't see that happening since he failed his, steroid test after the punishment was in place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, look, it's one of those things that, say what you want about A-Rod, there just doesn't seem to be as much of an argument for him as opposed to other steroid users.
Another steroid user who falls off the ballot now is Manny Ramirez. He ends his Hall of Fame ballot with 38.8%. This was his final year. Manny's done. We'll probably not hear about him in the Hall of Fame for a while, at least until they decide to clean up. We talked about Clemens and Bonds and their whole issue. They have one more chance to ever be on the Hall of Fame, and that's in about 8 years from now or so. So we'll see what happens. Bobby Abreu at 30.8. I don't think he's going to get in, but he did make a pretty sizable jump from last year. Jimmy Rollins at 25.4%. Surprising that he's not tied to Chase Utley.
I would think that Jimmy Rollins would actually get more votes than Chase Utley. I think Jimmy Rollins was a better player.
He's polling in the same kind of space as how I think it was Edgar Martinez polled before he ended up getting in on his 10th ballot. So it's not done yet for Jimmy.
No, I just like the fact that Chase Utley is regarded higher at this point than Jimmy Rollins is a little mind-boggling to me. Just because Jimmy Rollins was a better defender, thought overall he was a better hitter during their primes. I think Chase Utley obviously had more power, but all around, I thought Jimmy Rollins was just a much better player and a better leader.
Now we have another Philly, Cole Hamels. His first year on the ballot, he's the only first-year player to stick around, 23.8%. I think he's going to eventually make that King Felix jump, and he'll probably see enshrinement in a few years. Because, again, they're going to have to start letting in starting pitchers from this new generation where they're not pitching deep into games, and it's just a different position.
Yeah, I don't know what they're going to do about pitchers. I think maybe even you start seeing more relievers get in as well.
I think so, too. I think like a Craig Kimbrell or a Kenley Jansen have much stronger chances. And that brings me up to somebody we're going to talk about later in K-Rod, who I think should be talked about in that same vein. But Dustin Pedroia is the next up, 20.7. Again, these guys are iffy. They could end up becoming Hall of Famers years down the line. But right now they need, another 40+% of the vote, 50% of the vote. That's just not there. Mark Burley at 20%, Omar Vizquel at 18.4. How about David Wright at 14.8?
I'm shocked he's hanging on.
People respect him. And again, he's somebody who I had on my ballot when we did our exercise a few weeks ago. K-Rod at 11.8. He's somebody kind of like a Billy Wagner, who's kind of paved the way for relievers. He's somebody who I think should get a stronger look. He was so dominant. And it was in that first class of relievers that really took the league by storm, that weren't Rivera or Wagner. Or Hoffman. He was at next level with Jansen and Kimbrell, Aroldis Chapman, those guys who are that next step below, but highly elite relievers. And then Torrey Hunter is the lowest remaining player staying, and he's been hovering around this 8.7% mark. He's never going to get in at this rate, but he's somebody that's always sticking around. The guys that fell off, Ryan Braun, Edwin Encarnacion, Shin-Soo Choo, Matt Kemp, Hunter Pence, Rick Porcello, Alex Gordon, Nick Markakis, your boy Gio Gonzalez, Howie Kendrick, and Daniel Murphy. They didn't reach the 5% needed. Some of them, like Gio, Murphy, and Howie, got 0 votes, whereas guys like Gordon and Porcello got a couple votes, 1 or 2. What surprises you the most out of this whole Hall of Fame ballot?
The fact that names like Daniel Murphy and Gio Gonzalez and Howie Kendrick.
I mean, in order to be
Nick
on the ballot, you
Markakis
need to be in the league 10 years.
It's a waste of all of our time.
Honestly. I know, but it's an honor for them to even be on the ballot. It shows that you had staying power in the league. So, I mean, I would overlook the fact that they're on the ballot. But what about the ballot, surprised you with the way things are voting and where players are?
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot more votes that were being dished out to me. It felt like, you saw a lot of guys jump. Seeing, the higher percentages that you were talking about for King Felix, A-Rod jumping up a little bit. These are the same guys who voted last year. They had these votes before. They chose not to give it to A-Rod before. They're giving him a couple now, giving Felix more now. That I think we saw some bigger jumps than I was expecting.
Right. So when we look at the ballot overall, the Hall of Fame has elected 354 players or members. 281 are players, and 144 of them have come through this ballot that we're kind of seeing now. The average ballot, like you said, you're seeing a lot of names, is actually down from last year. This year, they averaged 5.77 names per ballot, down from 6.77 last year. So a full name down on the ballot average. And only 20.9% of the voters used all 10. And that's down 4% from last season. So it's kind of crazy how it feels like more names are out there, more votes are cast, but we're down on the year-to-year ballot breakdown.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess that, like, because didn't we have, like, you get some guys that get in with those 90%.
Right.
So that's going to affect the averages there a little bit.
And out of there are 428 ballots mailed out, right? 99.3 of them actually were returned, meaning that 0.7% of the people who got a ballot never even sent it back.
Which means you should not be allowed to vote anymore.
Unless it got lost in the mail, because they don't do it digitally. And then 11 blank ballots were submitted. And that's the most since the record of 14 in 2021.
Wow.
So while it seems like a lot because you had a lot of guys jump, I just think that's more of a nature of a weaker ballot where guys are able to spread out their votes a little bit more, and there weren't really any consensus names. Like even Beltran, who only got in at 84.2, Jones at 78.4. So you had a lot of wiggle room there. But moving on from the Hall of Fame, do you have any final thoughts on it?
No, just congratulations to those guys. I think they're deserving, Andrew Jones and Carlos Beltran. Just nice to see your childhood favorite player get in finally.
Of course. Now it starts the year of the Buster Posey ballot, and I will state right now in no uncertain terms, Buster Posey is by far not a Hall of Famer, should not even come close to touching it. Overrated, has done nothing but harm baseball in his career. Posey has done nothing to benefit the sport. He shouldn't come close to Cooperstown. He should be somewhere in like Southern California or Arizona, like that far away from, keep him in San Francisco. He should not touch the Hall of Fame. He's done nothing to warrant it. He was on good teams, and that was it. But we'll save that for next offseason. Now we're talking the top catchers in baseball. So, Ben, who is your number 5 top catcher?
Number 5, I have Patrick Bailey. And the reason I'm
Patrick
going with Bailey. Yep.
Great defender.
San Francisco. Yep. Best defensive catcher in baseball. And I think that's worth something here.
It is.
Obviously, the offense needs to pick it up a bit. But this guy is hands down the best catcher in baseball. His fielding run value of 30 led all of Major League Baseball by a very wide margin last year. I think that he's someone who had to make the list.
Yeah, he's somebody who if his bat was just a little bit better, I would have had in. It's just so hard to justify because the defense,
especially with the DH now, your catcher doesn't have to be a world
they
beater.
Don't have
but if he
to,
is
but
a
he's
great backstop and a great defender, that's almost more valuable.
He is such a great defender. I just need a little bit more out of him offensively because he just really doesn't bring anything to the plate that way. And you need offense to win. You can have the best defensive team and you're never going to win games.
That's a position where I'm sacrificing offense for defense every day.
Of course. I just need a little bit more out of the offense.
And I think we can get there.
I do too. I really do like him.
I also, though, feel like the catcher position is just not what it used to be. It is very thin.
It's very thin. For me, my number 5 is William Contreras of the Brewers. I looked at catchers and I used a marker of about 400 plate at bats from last season to kind of gauge where their stats were, which is about 102 at bats short of being qualified because there are only 8 qualified catchers last year. And I felt like that was too small of a sample size to go off of. So for me, William Contreras, 3.6 FWAR. He had a 113 WRC plus, 147 hits, hit 260. He had the number 4 on base percentage out of all catchers in baseball at 355. I think he's a very good player. Doesn't reach the peaks of what his brother was in his heyday, but still an all-around really solid player.
Yeah, anytime you have an athlete behind the plate, it's always exciting.
Number 4 for you.
Number 4, I have Alejandro Kirk. This is a guy who got a lot of public attention with the Blue Jays run. This is also, though, someone who has a ton of pop. You love a short, compact hitter like Kirk just because you can really just unload. Their swings are so aesthetically pleasing. This is a guy that, the Blue Jays really needed to develop and become one of the best catchers in the league. He's been very good defensively. The offense, though, it picked back up after a couple down years. Just overall, when you're a catcher on a World Series team and you show out like that in the postseason, you're going to get a lot of attention. And again, it's a thin position.
For me, my number 4 is Hunter Goodman from the Rockies. The Rockies do have a really good player at catcher. 3.4 WAR, 275 batting average. He's one of 7 catchers with a positive offense and defensive rating, according to Fangraphs. He has 150 hits in 144 games, the most hits among catchers. And he had the number 3 slugging percentage out of all catchers last year at 323. So he's a very, very solid player, and the Rockies do have one in him. How's about number 3 for you, Ben?
Number 3, I'm straying away from the defense a little bit here, and that's just because of the offensive season this guy had last year, and that's Shea Langeliers. 31 home runs, 72 RBIs, 277 batting average, F-WAR of almost 4, 3.9, on a horrible team. Outside of Rooker, there wasn't really anybody in that lineup that you were too afraid of. Langeliers is a guy that they got back in the Olsen trade, I believe it was. He's finally starting to blossom into that superstar type player that they were hoping he would be. He's someone I could see taking another step this year.
I really do like Shea Langeliers. I just want that defense to kind of step up a little bit and not be such a detriment to him. I have Will Smith at number 3. Dodgers backstop, 4.1 F-WAR. He had the number 2 offensive rating among all catchers last season. He was number 2 in WRC plus at 161. He had the best on base percentage at 404. He's just an all-around really solid player and the only homegrown Dodger worth talking about on this team of superstars. And that's what separates the Dodgers from super teams in the past. The Dodgers have actually bought it, where teams like the 90s Yankees, the 90s Braves, and other, super teams were mostly built on homegrown stars.
Yeah, that's my number 2 is Will Smith.
Yeah.
I clearly you have Kirk at number 2.
Why is it clearly?
Well, because Cal Raleigh has to be number 1, right?
Doesn't
The guy
have to
was
be.
just in the MVP running. But you look at, Will Smith, I believe he is just all around a better player at this point than Alejandro Kirk. I feel like he's an all around better hitter. I think you're going to get more out of him. I think defensively is where Kirk has a little bit of an edge, but I think the numbers for Will Smith are a little bit skewed. This is a guy who doesn't play a ton in the regular season, not nearly as much because the Dodgers are a team that can afford to let him sit a little bit, and they want to gear up and just save him up for October.
For me, Alejandro Kirk at 2, number 2 in WAR among all catchers last year at 4.7. He has the lowest strikeout rate among catchers at 11.7%. He hit 282. He had the second best defensive rating among all catchers, only behind Patrick Bailey. Kirk's a guy who's really streaky. He grinds his at-bats. He's somebody, it's him and Vladdy were the only guys on the Blue Jays I did not want to see at the plate. And honestly, there were times where I'd rather see Vladdy than Alejandro Kirk, because at least I know you can strike Vladdy out. Kirk is just going to grind you and then just hit a double on a rope. He is one of the most underrated hitters in baseball, I think. And that brings us to number one.
Yeah, Cal Raleigh. I mean, look, I just kind of said it. MVP season last year. What he did as a catcher was almost unheard of. 60 home runs, 125 RBIs. Um, the 7 fielding run value, the 9.1 F4. Like, it's double, a little bit less than double what the next highest catcher was
Yeah.
in Alejandro Kirk. Just an unbelievable year. Obviously, he's not going to be able to follow it up with the exact same numbers, but still, if he's putting up 40 home runs and 90 RBIs, like, this guy is still the best catcher in baseball.
Yeah, we just witnessed the greatest catcher offensive season of all time. Yeah. He had the best season last year among all catchers ever, 60 home runs, 9.1 WAR, 161 WRC plus. He also used to be really solid defensively. Last year, he kind of took the year off from defense in order to focus on the offense. Did win a platinum glove at one point. So while that doesn't mean anything for last season, since he was a bad catcher defensively, overall in his career, he has a very positive, notion about being a catcher. 125 RBIs. He's not going to hit 60. The chances that he hits 50 or even 40 aren't high. He's probably going to be somewhere in the 30s along with his career average. He did have a high, home run season last year. It's going to go down in the history books. I think Cal Raleigh's the best catcher in baseball right now. But I do think that there is a chance that Kirk or Will Smith, or honestly, somebody else could overtake him, because while he had one really good year, one all-time great year, the staying power that he just hasn't earned it like a Jose Ramirez at third base has, or some other players like Aaron Judge in the outfield, where they kind of earned that right to be perennially number one. Raleigh needs to come back out there next year and earn it again, because he doesn't just get penciled in year after year at number one. Next position,
Yeah,
though, to
for
talk
sure.
about. Next position to talk about is going to be DH. So, Ben, who is your number 5 DH?
Number 5, I think you might have an issue with this, but honestly, I wasn't sure how many guys we were going to qualify, how many guys on my list you're going to say are DHs.
Right.
So number 5, I'm going with Giancarlo Stanton, just because the
Interesting.
nature of the position. You want to talk about fear? This is a guy who, no matter what, you're going to fear him. Like, you remember Albert Pujols at the end of his career chasing those home runs. He was still feared. He wasn't the same hitter he was. And not necessarily saying that Stanton is at that point, but this is a guy who will always just be feared because he can hit a ball 500 feet at any point.
Yeah, for me, my number 5 isn't Giancarlo Stanton. It's Yandy Diaz of the Rays. 2.9 WAR, 135 WRC plus. Hit 300. That feels like it's unheard of in the league overall, let alone for a position focused on only hitting. That seems to be only power there. He hit 25 home runs, and he finished in the top 20 in the MVP voting in the American League.
Yeah,
That was about number 4 for you.
Yandy Diaz. So, no point in really running through the stats there again. Just, you love his adaptability. This is a guy who expected to be playing first base for the Rays, gets moved into the DH spot, and yeah, impressive to be able to hold that down despite not bringing those terrific power numbers. I mean, look, still 25 home runs is nothing to sneeze at, but look, this is a guy who can go out and hit.
He absolutely can. My number 4 is Brent Rooker of the A's. Didn't have as great of a season as he did in 2024, but still 2.4 WAR, 122 WRC plus. He hit 30 home runs in a minor league ballpark, but still on a really tough team to see pitches, because there weren't a lot of great players. He hit 262, and he hit 40 doubles, which is among the tops in the league. So who's your number 3?
Yeah, for me, my number 3 is Kyle Schwarber. Now, this is a guy who I wasn't sure if we were going to be able to put him in this category. Um, but, 56 home runs. The 240 average isn't necessarily what I love, but his on base is great out of that leadoff hole. He's terrific at driving in runs out of the leadoff hole, which is one of those surprising things. But outside of Shohei Ohtani, there may not be a more dangerous designated hitter in all of baseball, but I still have him at number 3. There is one other person on top of the unicorn that I put ahead of him.
Yeah, for me, my number 3 is Yordan Alvarez. Now, I talked about with Cal Raleigh that he needs to earn the right to be number 1 next year. Yordan Alvarez had a very poor season. He only played 48 games last year, but he's earned the right, in my opinion, to be still in the top 5 because of what he's done as a DH. Only had a half WAR last year, but his exit velo averaged 94.7% miles per hour, I should say. When he's healthy, he's still among the tops in the league, works his walks, hits for power. I can't think of, he's among the scariest hitters that I can think of. Honestly, he might be the scariest hitter outside of like a Rafael Devers I've seen as a Yankee fan. Yordan Alvarez, if he can be healthy, can challenge the guy I have at number 2. But I think he's also just as capable of a hitter as the guy at number 1.
Yeah, you mentioned my number 2 there, and it's Rafael Devers. This is someone who, to me, yeah, the eye test does a lot, and he is such a terrific hitter. And when he is hot, there is nobody better. Still a 372 on base last year, 35 home runs, 109 RBIs. He had that trade mid-season, the transition to becoming a DH after telling the Red Sox he wouldn't be a DH. All that drama with the Red Sox just for the Red Sox to end up moving off of Bregman in a year anyway. So how much of that was worth it for Boston? Who knows? But Rafael Devers is one of the purest hitters in baseball. Love his swing. I know you as a Yankee fan saw plenty of Devers just causing you
Way
guys
too
problems
many.
late in games.
I'm so
So
glad he's gone. Garrett Cole can breathe a sigh of relief.
honestly, but the 135 weighted runs created plus, this is just a guy who, again, even if he had a down year, I feel like he has earned the right to be in whatever category he's going to put himself in for a position.
Yeah. I have Kyle Schwarber at 2. The reason I don't have Devers is because I think he split too much time between DH, third, and first for me to consider him at any of them.
See, but didn't Schwarber play enough of the outfield with all the injuries Philly had at that point?
Not to me.
That's where I was like on the fence.
Right, and that's why it's your list. It's really however you want. Like I perceive Schwarber as a DH. I don't perceive Devers as a full DH yet. I think Devers could get there. I just think he split too much time, at least in the way I think of him. But Schwarber with Philly, 152 WRC plus. He had a 928 OPS, 4.9 WAR, 132 RBIs, 56 home runs, all out of the leadoff spot, and on a Philly team that really, really needed him to step up. Like he had a chance at the MVP, trailed off a little bit, but he definitely was in the argument. Schwarber, really, really good player. Finally found a home in Philly, and I'm glad he's staying there too. Now for 1, who is number 1?
Before we say number 1, can we just give a mention to the fact that neither of us put George Springer on our list?
Well, I had
Because
George Springer last week when we talked about outfielders. George Springer was my number 4 outfielder.
okay, well, yeah, I mean, look, fair enough, but this is a guy who I think is a DH at this point. I think that the Blue Jays have kind of moved in that direction.
Of
I don't
course.
necessarily think he cracks the top 5 anyway for me, but um, you know, number 1 is obvious. It's Shohei Ohtani. He is the best player in all of baseball. 158 games, 55 home runs, 102 RBIs, a 418 WOBA, 172 weighted runs created. Like, there's just nobody that can make Kyle Schwarber and Rafael Devers just seem so far off from the number one spot. Because,
Yeah, I mean,
look, to me, those two guys are terrific hitters. They're nowhere near Ohtani.
My number one DH is the clear-cut number 2 player in all of baseball. The gap between him and 1 is almost as big as the gap between him and number 2 and number 3, and that's Shohei Ohtani. 7.5 WAR, number 2 offensive player of anybody who played DH, behind Aaron Judge, who is the easily best player in all of baseball, and it's not even close. Ohtani was also the best base runner among all players to play DH, and that can't be understated. How well he moves on the base paths and how he operates, how much he brings to the table in just terms of knowing when to extend a hit from a double to a triple, single to a double, going first to third, first to home, second to home. He does a lot of really good stuff, and that's among the reasons why the Dodgers are where they are. 172 WRC plus, 1.014 OPS. You know you have a great player when they one dot the OPS. One of 2 players to do that behind Judge. Notice again.
Wait, so
behind.
what makes Judge a better hitter? Is it Judge's eye? Is it Judge's view of
I
the
mean,
strike zone?
Judge is walks more. I think he strikes out similarly, but much higher average. Gets on base way more. Plays the field.
The power is right around the same.
The powers are right around the same, but I think
Aaron Judge provide
Judge
anything
hits
on the mound?
No, but he also provides something defense. Ohtani's a number 3 starter at best.
Okay, a number 3
and he hasn't
starter.
done that in years. But he hasn't done that in years where he's been a consistent starter.
He came out and provided some great innings for them down the
Yeah,
stretch.
sure. Do it again. This is the same reason he won the Rookie of the Year was based off of what if. He is Mr. What If because he's never been able to do it consistently for multiple years in a row. We have Judge, who is putting together the greatest career of a right-handed hitter in history.
So Judge hits from the right side of the plate, and all of a sudden he's better than Ohtani.
Yes. That's the thing is, like, I don't even think it's an argument that Judge is better than Ohtani. It's just so clear-cut statistically because what Judge brings
I disagree, and I also I don't know because Judge does not get walked in the playoffs the way Ohtani does, and Ohtani has a much deeper lineup behind him.
I mean, Ohtani's playoff statistics offensively are also worse than Judge career-wise.
Ohtani's playoff statistics, though, I'm sure Ohtani has more home runs, and I'm also sure that Ohtani is also not pitched to at all. Like they don't pitch to Ohtani. Pitchers are more willing to pitch to Aaron Judge than Shohei Ohtani.
That's the thing is that's not true when it comes to the playoffs, especially like the 2024 playoffs. Ohtani was getting targeted constantly by the Yankees and the Phillies. He wasn't bringing anything. Judge hits like 50 to 60 points higher batting average wise. His on base percentage is miles better. It's one of those things where Ohtani gets the nod by a lot of people because what if he is a good pitcher? But he still hasn't pitched a full season in like 3 or 4 years. So
Look,
it's not a fair.
I'm done trying to argue that Ohtani is not the best player in baseball.
Ohtani is the clear-cut number 2.
I lost that argument for too many years. The paycheck says everything.
The paycheck means nothing. Literally, how much a player gets paid is not indicative of how they are as a player.
There's not a single team that would give Aaron Judge the money that Shohei Ohtani.
There's not a single team that would give Shohei Ohtani that money that he's making right now if you put him on the market. Is Paul Skeens not the best pitcher in baseball because he's only making what he makes?
Rookie contract, different story.
Judge, if he hit free agency later, would have made in the 600 millions. But when he hit it, he took less money because it didn't have that big Ohtani, Soto, Vlad Guerrero, Kyle Tucker boom. I don't think it's a fair argument. Oh, look at what they get paid.
It's not a fair argument because it doesn't help your side.
No, because it doesn't mean anything. Because if you go back through contracts, right, we could compare 1-to-1 with different players and what they made, and it just doesn't make sense to use, they're getting paid this, so they must be good. Anthony Rendon got paid how much money, and was he among the top third basemen?
At the time when he signed, yes.
And what about the season after he signed?
Look, the dude stopped caring about baseball.
Well, that's what I
Obviously,
mean
he
is what you
wasn't.
get paid doesn't mean anything in terms of how good of
No,
a
but
player
what
you
you're
are.
willing to get, what teams are willing to pay for your services, 100% is indicative of the type of player you are and the type of impact you can make.
I just think that it's what Judge brings to the table. And again, I don't want this to devolve into Ohtani versus Judge because Ohtani is the
You
number
made
one.
this about that.
Well, because you started by calling him the best player in baseball when you knew, but Ohtani is the number one DH in baseball and the number two player in baseball. But I do want to talk about some free agent contracts that are out there now. We had Ranger Suarez to the Red Sox. He signed a 5-year, $130 million deal. Ben, he's out of your division. He's into mine. What can I expect to see out of him?
He's a good lefty. It's a great signing for the Red Sox just because, in the American League East in general, you just need good left-handed pitching. When you're going to pitch in Yankee Stadium, when you're going to pitch in Baltimore, when you're going to pitch in Fenway with the pesky pole, you need good lefties. I think Ranger Suarez is a good ad. I think at this point, stockpile pitching any way you can. So anytime you can sign a good pitcher, it's a good move.
Now we got Kyle Tucker to the Dodgers. We spoke about that briefly, Dylan and I, last week. 4 years, 240 for a 60 AAV. Ben, I do want to get your thoughts because we also talked about Steve Cohen's ill-timed white smoke tweet. What are
Every
your
time.
thoughts?
This guy just needs to stop. Every single time he does this, the guy goes somewhere else. Every time. It's not the first time. It won't be the last. But look, my theory is that Rob Manfred is just funneling money to the Dodgers so that way they could increase their payroll and just dump all their money into all these guys. So this way everyone just caves and goes with the salary cap. It's the only explanation because the Dodgers at this point are the team that would benefit the least from having a salary cap. Like, yes, they might get grandfathered through and get a couple years of being able to have this atrociously high over the cap payroll, but they're going to lose out. They're the team that has been able to go out and just pay for everyone.
I mean, they also might force the Dodgers to start trading off players too. Like you can't have these guys at this payroll. You need to get to this threshold this year, down to this, down to this. Like you have 5 years to get your payroll down. Start moving players to get there.
Mm-hmm.
But Bo Bichette, the Mets rebound. The plan B. B stands for Bo. 3 for 126. Opt outs after every year. Do we like Bo? I mean, you're going to have corner infielders that have never played those positions before.
Yeah, I think shortstops can play anywhere on the diamond. I don't care. They're going to literally have a former shortstop at all 4 infield positions.
Yeah. It's just, to be
I don't
fair,
hate
Bo
it.
is notoriously one of the worst defensive shortstops in baseball.
Yeah, who cares? He's playing third base. We'll see how he does there.
Let's see.
It is what it is.
I just don't think the arm strength is there to play third. I think he's better suited for second base.
Okay, so then swap him and Semyon. You figure it out. I'm not worried about it at this point. It was about bringing a bat into the lineup. Obviously by the position choice here because they still need an outfielder.
Cody Bellinger's still there.
I can imagine that's who they're going for.
You're just going to have to top 5 for 160. And also beat out because Bellinger might take a little less to stay with the Yankees, so you're going to have to blow that offer out of the water.
Yeah, we'll see.
JT Realmuto signed with the Phillies, 3 for 45. I'm surprised it took this long to get him back there. But also the Phillies lost out in the 11th hour to the Mets on Bo Bichette. The Mets lost out in the 11th hour to the Dodgers on Kyle Tucker. So each move has its own ramifications going down the line. But I'm surprised that this wasn't one of the first ones done, kind of like a Kyle Schwarber was.
Yeah, you thought they would have. I thought they would have taken care of business on this one a lot sooner. I don't think that the value for JT was there for a lot of other teams just because of his decline. He's still a leader in that clubhouse. I think he is more valuable to the Phillies than any other team. But at the same time, when you have a catcher, he's serviceable, you got to roll with him. It's a thin position. You're not going to find a better replacement. And look, 15 mil a year, you can eat that. That's not bad.
Yeah. Now, we do have reports that Bellinger is likely to sign in the next coming days. Do you have any predictions on where he ends up going and for how much?
I think he goes back to the Yankees.
I do too at this rate. I just don't think he's going to get these 7 years that he wants, and then he's going to weigh. Would he rather a 3-year deal with a higher AAV or a 5-year deal at a lower AAV? And knowing that the sticking point for him wasn't money, it was years. He wanted the more years. I think he would take the less AAV for the more years.
Look, there's no way the Mets wouldn't offer. There's no way the Mets would offer Bellinger more years than Kyle Tucker. So
Right.
I just don't see it. And I look, if you're gonna undervalue other players, it's an overvalue if you're beating
Right.
160 at 5 years. So I just don't foresee Stearns going in that direction. I think they would prioritize pitching over that, maybe try to improve in a trade. But
Right.
yeah, he's going to be a Yankee still.
The going theories are that the Mets are offering 3 for 120 at $40 million a year. The Yankees are at
sense.
5 for 60. I think he probably leans to 5 for 60 because he wants the years. He doesn't want to hit free agency again.
No, so I mean, look, if you do 3 years, he'll hit free agency again. He'll end up making more money.
Right, but he doesn't want to hit free agency.
Well, he wants the stability as well.
Right. And that's why 7 years has been the sticking point in all the media. He wants his 7 years. The Yankees are staying firm at 5 for 160 and saying if somebody else blows you away, go there. We're not going to deal with this. And I kind of like that approach because too many times they've been played by Boris where they've negotiated against themselves. And now they're calling out his bluff. Take what we're giving you or take a hike. And honestly, as much as I like Bellinger, the player, I do think last year might have been his best season as a Yankee if he signs long-term. I just don't see him as a player that ages well. So I'd rather sign him on our terms than on his terms. Like, he's not a player that's going to make or break us. We're going to be a mediocre team the way we're constructed right now, either way. But another guy let's talk about that's on the trade market is Freddie Peralta from the Brewers. They're shopping their ace. I think it's stupid that they think that they can't afford him. It's a Brewers move, and right now the Dodgers are the favorites to land him.
Of course.
Because they also were voted to have the best farm system in all of baseball.
Yeah. I mean, look, if the Dodgers think they need more pitching, then he will be a Dodger. But, I think that's a name that the Mets would love. I know Stearns has thrown that around. He would love to reunite there. You saw he already brought back Williams. So, these are guys that I could see Stearns going for. I know he wants to bring an arm in through the trade market rather than a free agent deal. He doesn't like signing pitchers to long-term deals. But right now they're banking way too much on these young guys. They need another veteran or two that can add to this rotation. Freddie Peralta fits that bill big time. Add an ace to go in there with McLean and Tong and Sproat. All of a sudden, throw Peterson in the mix. This is a dangerous rotation if the rookies can step up.
Has a lot of potential. A lot.
Well, I think McLean's a stud, but I need to see more out of Tong, and Sproat has
I think I like Tong the most out of the three. I think he's got the highest ceiling.
Well, I loved what you saw out of him. His swing and miss stuff is as good as it gets. He just needs to develop a little bit more.
And then who knows, maybe one of these guys gets traded or two of these guys get traded in another deal. I've been seeing the Mets and Jarren Duran connected a lot. You would hope he doesn't cost one of them, but it could.
You would think that those three are off the market.
I
could see Vientos or Beatty headlining a package going over there, as well as like some other young arms. But those three, Stearns has been pretty staunch on.
I mean, again, Scooble's another guy that we could see moved. I keep throwing out Fernando Tatis Jr. because the Padres do need to cut payroll pretty drastically. But I also don't think the NL is where you'll see Tatis go. I think they'll send him to the AL.
See, I could see him going to Boston.
That's what I was going to say. Boston or the Yankees will be highly motivated to get Tatis.
Well, especially if they don't end up with Bellinger.
Right. Or even if they do, I think they'll gladly throw out a Dominguez and a Spencer Jones and some other bigger prospects.
How much value does Dominguez have at this point?
Given that he's only like 23 and he just finished his rookie season.
Yeah, but like rookie season.
I mean, yeah, it was considered his rookie
Like
season.
by a
Not my
technicality, but
fault. He
he's
had 3 rookie seasons.
my point. So like
No, I mean
if
it's
you
bouncing
have
back
that
from
many
injury.
rookie seasons though, that means
He
things have gone wrong.
when he initially came up, he came up late, got hurt, was out pretty much all the following season, and then just came back. I think what is going to help him or hurt him is what he does in spring training. Can he earn that starting left field job with the Yankees? Center field is also available. I don't think Trent Grisham has a hold on that job at 20 million. I think they're very willing to bench him. And the Yankees offseason goes very
Oh
differently if he
man,
doesn't
why would
accept
you
that qualifying.
qualify him?
Nobody knows. We were trying to sneak a draft pick, I guess.
You really thought that guy was gonna walk away from 20 million?
Terrible.
That's
But he
like when
did.
the Astros did that with what's his face, Josh Reddick.
It's tough, but like you also can't trade him till like June or something. But as soon as we can, he'll be shipped off, I'm sure. But you have any other predictions or players you want to see? Anything
No,
else in the world of baseball?
nothing really. Just wait, ready for pitchers and catchers. A few more weeks.
Yeah, a couple more weeks. We'll be back next week. Hopefully, we have some more signings. We'll
We should
talk
see
more.
Bellinger by next week.
I would think we see Bellinger by next week. It's getting close. I think Scherzer and Verlander are still available. Where do they pitch at the end of their career? Verlander is being connected to the Orioles, and I saw that this will continue his streak and only pitching for orange teams. Tigers, Astros, Mets, Giants, all teams that feature orange. That's pretty funny. But I don't know, for Ben Mandel, Corey Jason, that'll do it. It's been the Outsider Sports Baseball Podcast.